Hi, welcome back and welcome to the start of a short series. We're going to be turning this cord of wood, you can see the sort of thing you might find on a wood pile ready to go on the stove. We're going to turn that into some small boards and make something out of that, maybe a small box or something similar. It's going to be a short series, so today what we're going to do is look at this and assess exactly where the usable wood is. We don't want to have anything that's going to be too difficult to work with, so we want to get rid of any of the rubbish. And I'll show you how we break it down. So let's get started. So taking a closer look, you can see this has come out of a log. Obviously we don't want to use right up to the edge where the bark was, so we'll be taking some of that away later on. And we've got not quite 90 degrees, I think it's clearer this end. We've got something like about 65, 70 degree angle on the end there. And there's some areas here that we don't want to use, so let's check those out. If we look in the center, you can see the grain is reasonably straight, which is nice. And it's also reasonably clear, can't see any knots in there. If we move off towards this end though, we can see the grain suddenly becoming quite wavy, and that's going to cause us a few problems. At this end here, again, the grain is running off in this direction, and we've also got some rather bad spalting here. Now spalting can be absolutely fine as long as it's stable, but at this end it's just a little bit punky, a little bit soft, so we won't want to use that end. If we turn it around and look at the other cleaved side, I'm going to say cleaved, this was broken down from a log using a froe, so basically a blade put on here, bang with a hammer, starts opening the wood up, and then we lever off what's left on there. Do that a few times and we end up with these cords. So looking at the other side here, we can see the grain reasonably straight up to about here and then wandering off. At the other end, wavy again, so similar to this side, it's very wavy, so we don't want that. And in the transition between the two sides, so looking at this edge, we can see it's twisted a bit, but that shouldn't really concern us too much. But obviously here we've got a knot, so again an area of concern that we don't really want to have to deal with later on. On the outside, looking at the sapwood there, there's nothing really to worry about. We'll clean some of that off before we use it, but there's nothing like knots showing through or anything that might indicate there may be foreign bodies in there, such as bits of lead shot, barbed wire, that sort of thing. So if we go back to the faces, I think we need to take off this wavy bit. So on this face we really want to end up about there. Look at this face, yes, about there as well. And at the other end, well, we definitely want to get rid of the knot. We can see some waving going on here, so probably that's as long as we want to go. And round here, probably even want to come back a little bit further. Now when I break this down, I'm going to do it a little bit longer than that, so I'll allow a bit of extra material at both ends. That'll be useful for clamping later on. We don't have to worry about putting any marks in there. Now how are we going to cut this down? In the workshop, if I'm working on something like this, then I tend to use a bow saw. I've got a small bow saw here in the workshop, and this one copes with about anything that I have in the workshop, and you can get bigger bow saws if you're working on larger items outside. Now the other thing that I didn't mention about this piece of wood is this has been well dried, and it's also been in the workshop now for probably close on a year, so it really is it's lovely and dry. Now that means it's going to be harder to saw, so we'll try with a bow saw. It should be okay, but it also means that because it's so dry, we could actually use a panel saw, and we'll be cutting it across the grain, so cross grain panel saw, or you could use just a panel saw, universal panel saw from a DIY store. To support the wood when I'm sawing it, I'm going to use these mortising stools. They're small saw horses. They're my design actually, and if you want to build similar ones, or if you're just a beginner yourself, if you know a woodworker who's friendly, he may build you a pair for yourself. They're very handy. They interlock, the legs interlock like so, and we can splay them a bit and put the log wedged in between the two tops. That's what I'm going to do here. Like so. And with my foot on top, that should be enough to hold things in place. My saw mark is close to the edge of the bench. Just move it out a little bit. So I'm going to be sawing through roughly here. So let's give this end a go with the bow saw. So foot on, that should wedge down between the saw horses. The bow saw's got big teeth, so that's going to be a bit jarring if we try and go straight on the edge like that. So if we get it flat on the wood a little bit, start it off with a couple of pull strokes. Now I also said we could have used the panel saw because this is nice and dry. So just to show that, let's finish this off with the panel saw. We'll take a look at the end there, because I suspect you can see where we've used the bow saw, it's really quite rough. It doesn't matter because we're not going to be using this. As I said, we've left an extra about an inch on both ends, which will come off later on. But where I've cut it with the panel saw, it's a lot smoother, and that's the difference between using a saw with teeth that are widely spaced apart and aimed for removing material really fast, and a saw that's aimed at giving a reasonably smooth cut, which the panel saw is. So before next time, I'll cut this end off as well, and then we can turn our attention to starting to flatten out these sides and working out where we can get our boards from. So, see you soon. Don't forget to share my videos. It's the only way other people will find out about them. And if you want to make sure and see the next episode, then do ensure you're subscribed and you've ticked the notification icon. Cheerio.